24 hours.
No, there is blood! There is blood out there! Send the police now!
What if someone documented every depraved act that they committed and left it all behind for you to find? Today we're diving into the Poughkeepsie Tapes, a 2007 found footage film that flew under the radar for years, only to develop a cult following years later from die-hard horror fans. Directed by John Eric Dowdle, the film presents itself as a faux true crime documentary. The premise? After a suspected killer's house is raided in Poughkeepsie, New York, authorities discover hundreds of VHS tapes meticulously documenting years of abductions, torture, and murder. The genius or horror of the Poughkeepsie Tapes lies in its realism. It's structured like an episode of Dateline gone horribly, horribly wrong. Police interviews, grainy footage, and cold narration all blend together to sell you the idea that what you're watching could be real. The killer isn't your typical slasher villain. He's methodical, manipulative, and terrifyingly human. His persona shifts, sometimes charming, sometimes childlike, and then suddenly monstrous. He isn't supernatural, he's not immortal, and that's what makes him so frightening. One of the film's most disturbing elements is its focus on Cheryl Dempsey, a teenager who's kidnapped and broken over years of psychological torture. Her final interview is one of the most haunting moments in found footage horror, played with disturbing realism by actress Stacy Chbosky. Hope I got that right. So why did this film take so long to catch its audience? Well, it was shelved for years, reportedly due to distribution issues, and only resurfaced on digital platforms in 2014. But the delay may have helped with its mythos. Pirated copies circulated, rumors spread, and some viewers really thought it was real. The Poughkeepsie Tapes isn't for everyone. It's slow-paced, deliberately grim, and disturbingly convincing. But if you're a fan of unsettling found footage horror, this is a hidden gem worth digging up. It's not gory in the traditional sense. Most of the violence is off-screen or implied, but the psychological weight it leaves, that'll stick with you long after the credits roll. Warning: this movie was so disturbing people thought it was a real snuff film. Guinea Pig, Flowers of Flesh and Blood isn't your typical horror movie. It's a 1985 Japanese short, only 42 minutes long, but unforgettable. A man dressed as a samurai kidnaps a woman, then calmly and clinically dismembers her on screen. It looked so real, actor Charlie Sheen actually called the FBI. No joke. The creators had to prove that it was fake, using props, effects, and editing tricks. But the damage was done. A legend was born. One of the sickest films ever made. But is it art or exploitation? You decide. Let me know in the comments. This is the film that ate its way onto the video Nasties list, literally. In 1980, Italian director Joe D'Amato unleashed Anthropophagous, a bleak, slow-burning horror film that made headlines for one thing: a scene where a man rips open a pregnant woman's belly and eats her unborn child. Released on VHS as The Grim Reaper, the uncut version was banned in the UK under the Obscene Publications Act. Censors were horrified, but horror fans, they were curious. The killer isn't a monster or a zombie. He's a man, shipwrecked, starved, and broken, and what's left of him is a pure, silent madness. This wasn't just gore, it was nihilism on tape, and it made Anthropophagous one of the most infamous horror films of the 1980s. Stick around, we're diving into the rotten core of this cult classic. Few films on the Video Nasties list earn their reputation quite like Anthropophagous. Directed by Joe D'Amato and released in 1980, this Italian horror film became a symbol of everything the moral panic feared. Extreme violence, disturbing imagery, and no moral compass in sight. In the UK and the US, the film was released on VHS under the title The Grim Reaper. That first release was uncut, and it's the one that got the film banned. Later versions under the same name were heavily censored, so what you saw back in the day depended entirely on the tape you got your hands on. The plot? A group of tourists head to a remote Greek island and find it eerily deserted. Something, or someone, is hunting them down. That someone is Klaus, a man who survived a shipwreck by eating his own family and never quite recovered. Now he's alive, and still hungry. No supernatural curse, no virus, just a man consumed by trauma and driven by hunger. Joe D'Amato usually trafficked in sexploitation and softcore horror, but here he leaned hard into dread. Anthropophagous is slow, quiet, and empty. The island feels dead. The characters feel disposable. But when the violence comes, it's unforgettable. There are two scenes that made this film infamous. One, Klaus tearing open a pregnant woman and eating her fetus, and 2. Klaus disemboweling himself and eating his own guts. These scenes weren't just graphic, they were shocking in concept, and for British censors in the early 80s, that was enough to land the film on the banned list. Critics dismissed it as trash, and to be fair, the acting is flat, the story's thin, and half the runtime is people slowly walking through abandoned buildings. But fans of European horror see something more, a film with genuine atmosphere and a villain that gets under your skin. George Eastman, who also wrote the film, plays Klaus like a feral animal. He doesn't speak, he barely blinks, he just looms, breathes, and kills. It's simple and deeply unsettling. After the ban, Anthropophagous developed a cult following. For years, it was unavailable in the UK in its true form until finally getting an uncut release in the early 2000s. Today, it's regarded as a cornerstone of nasty-era horror, not because it's well made, but because it went further than most dared. And if the name Klaus rings a bell, it should. Eastman returned for D'Amato's follow-up, Absurd, playing another silent killer in another over-the-top bloodbath. We've already covered that one in its own episode, so check it out if you haven't yet. Anthropophagous isn't a fun film. It's not even a good one in the traditional sense, but it's one of the few nasties that actually lives up to its name. Ugly, brutal, and totally committed to leaving you disturbed. Whether you call it Anthropophagous or The Grim Reaper, it's still one of the most shocking films ever released on home video. Even now, over 40 years later, it still leaves a bad taste in your mouth. This is Absurd, 1981. Absurd is Italy's answer to Halloween. If Halloween was even more soaked in blood, dipped in sacrilege, and dubbed badly into English. Directed by Joe D'Amato and starring George Eastman, Absurd follows Mikos, a near-invincible man created through shady experiments with ties to the church. He's loose and healing faster than he can be hurt, and he's cutting a path of destruction through a quiet suburban town. And the kills? Pure vintage nastiness. First up, a nurse is taken out with a surgical drill to the skull, a machine shop owner gets his head split in half with a bandsaw, a babysitter takes a pickaxe to the head while she's trying to protect a child, and then there's the infamous oven scene. Owen is forced headfirst into the flames. Then Nikos finishes her off with scissors to the throat. That one alone added this to the video nasties list, I'm sure. George Eastman plays Nikos like a human tank. No emotion and no mercy. He strangles, stabs, and bludgeons through the town while the synth score hums away like something out of a nightmare. And in the finale, a young girl in a full leg cast takes matters into her own hands. She stabs Mikos in the eye with a drafting compass and then finishes him off with a clean axe decapitation. Absurd made the video nasties list not just for its gore, but for its cold, mean spirit. It's a strange cocktail of religious guilt, medical horror, and Italian excess. It's not just absurd, it's vicious.
Ladies and gentlemen, the bloodiest thing that ever happened in front of a camera. Snuff.
Snuff is a movie that is unsure exactly what it is. It jumps between genres and niches frequently. Bike, cult, drama, horror, to a more generalized exploitation style. It tries very hard to hit all the genre cliches and tropes as efficiently as possible. This is demonstrated from the very start of the movie. We start with an overly extended scene of dope smoking and motorcycle riding featuring the most Born to be Wild sounding song that is not Born to be Wild. Through some quick plot points, we arrive at the central cult of the movie. Led by a man named Satan or Satan, we are torturing a woman by cutting her toes with a knife. We follow this cult committing assorted murders, doing drugs, providing gratuitous nudity, and of course more motorcycles. There are a couple scenes at Carnival as well that are fun, I guess, if you're into that. The plot isn't super deep. It's more of a vessel to show people what they came for, but it is fun enough to justify its fairly short runtime. Snuff does have an interesting vibe, as it lets some shots and scenes just play longer than they really need to, even if they aren't really plot heavy. Just kind of gives it gives like a dreamlike quality to the movie. What made this movie notorious is the faux Snuff film ending. The camera zooms out and we see the making of the film that we have been watching this whole time. We then witness the film crew murdering and dismembering a woman with some entertaining but ultimately unconvincing special effects. These special effects were apparently convincing enough for the mid-70s for some people to think that this was an actual Snuff film and even protest its release, even though there is some debate if the protesters were hired by the filmmakers just for publicity. Overall, Snuff isn't anything particularly mind-blowing. It is a fun film, mostly known for that iconic ending, but it is a fun ride that's worth your time.